there are many forces that impact them and present themselves in manifold ways. When we talk about it, we can talk about certainly about child physical abuse. That is one aspect of that, the physical violence that is suffered by many children. Child sexual abuse, often at the hand of strangers, family members, and other individuals. Domestic violence, which is in the presence of a child who are subjected to that abusive, dysfunctional families and the impact that it has on them. Online bullying and the predatory grooming and exploitation of our children that goes on. And finally, that collective thing of family violence where neglect and abuse and failure to thrive impacts children who are often victims, maybe even witnesses, and exposes them to incredible trauma. Trauma which, if left unresolved, can have lifelong impact and manifests itself in leading to a vicious cycle of intergenerational trauma that unfortunately gets passed on amongst families. For these reasons, raising awareness, pausing to reflect, is an opportunity to both acknowledge the vigilance that we must all do in a shared way and to build resiliency that we must always be engaged in. It takes a community effort, collective effort, and all of us doing our collective part. Today you will hear from multiple stakeholders and individuals of what is being done. And at the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office, as you can see here on the charts, there's some of the data that we have, that the in 2021 children's advocacy centers across the country, there were more than 76,000 cases of child abuse that were reported. There were more than 249,000 child sex abuse cases that were reported, and more than 32,000 cases of children witnessing violence. And Salt Lake County is not immune to the scourge of child abuse. From the moment that abuse is reported to our law enforcement partners, they begin working on it to address those issues, as well as with critical community partners. As you can also see that on one of the charts here, that we filed nearly 180 physical child abuse cases, more than 307 child sex abuse cases, 932 domestic violence presence of a child, and these were cases that we filed in the 3rd District Court. And that does not include also the other 924 charges in 2022 we filed for the domestic violence in presence of a child at the Justice Court level. We also participate with the FBI's Child Exploitation Task Force. Through this task force since 2019, we have brought more than 250 charges against individuals in Salt Lake County that prey on our children online. And we don't just want to talk about the stats today, because child abuse is about children. Our office also houses 2 locations of the Children's Justice Center, one here in downtown in this office and one in the south end of the valley. This is where law enforcement and members from the community can often bring children to these locations so child victims or witnesses to crime have a safe place to tell their story of what happened in a safe and supportive environment. We in fact, helped more than 1,400 families last year in that capacity. We have found that when victims are interviewed in an environment like the Children's Justice Center, you have an increased chance of success of prosecution because how the interviews are carried out, and we can also provide supportive surroundings for the families as well. But once we're done prosecuting the perpetrators, these crimes, we just don't thank the survivors and send them on their way. We understand through research that there is a trauma that the survivors need to be able to work through so they can break the cycle of violence before it becomes intergenerational trauma. That is why at the Salt Lake County DA's office, we also partnered up and created Camp Hope America, Utah. It is a 5-day summer camp where we take these young survivors and give them a chance to have a childhood with fun activities like archery, hiking, horseback riding, paddleboarding, and kayaking. And we use trauma-informed practices to help these kids not only have fun, but to work through their trauma caused by the crime that led them to our office in the first place. We actually have 2 experienced counselors here today, which we will offer to you also should you want to interview them as well. And what this really does is it recognizes, partnering with the University of Oklahoma, is that we build resiliency. We provide hope on peer-to-peer support. But we're not done with them by simply taking these children to this summer camp. We also have as a support to that our Pathways program. And we make a 3-year commitment to these children after their cases are done to meet with them monthly, engage in peer-to-peer support, build confidence and resiliency of these children for them and their families. Through interpersonal activities, social skill building, we are empowering them to live their best lives and not let the trauma be their identity or self-description. And in doing so, we're not only providing immediate help to them, but also disrupting the passing of unresolved trauma being passed on intergenerationally. We're also exploring that we know that it's not only important to build their interpersonal skills, but we know that children often suffer from academically as well. So we're also exploring at this time how to assist them with school support by offering them tutoring services here at the Salt Lake County DA's office for those 3 years as well. We're doing much, but by talking about this important issue, we hope to raise awareness and do even more and come together as a community to support our children. At the end of the day, it is about us collectively. And the more we talk about it, the more programming that we can provide, the better we can make an impact on this terrible, terrible thing in our community. With that, I'll turn my time over.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having us here today to bring awareness to child abuse. This is a real important topic. Law enforcement, we've been dealing with child abuse for hundreds of years, actually. One thing that I want to stress is that it's important for our community to know what child abuse is. Our district attorney talked about neglect, sexual abuse, child abuse, physical abuse, but it could be malnutrition. It could be just not providing food and clothing for children. What we are asking is our community to get involved, know what the signs are of child abuse. It could be just a child who is withdrawn, someone who is experiencing depression. You can see that the child is not being taken care of. It's important for our community to know that if you report it, we will investigate it. We recently had a case where involved individuals from our community reported it to law enforcement. Law enforcement went on scene. It was a family of 7 children under the age of 12. One of the children handed the officer a note that said, "Help me." This was very impactful for the officer because the officer then knew something is going on. After 70 hours of investigation, the detective was able to find a home for every one of the children in the home, a safe place for them to go. This is how critical this is, that our community is aware, and that's what our focus is today, is make our community aware that there is child abuse that is going on and how important it is that you get involved. We just want to save children, and if we can save one life, it's worth it. We have our detectives who are highly trained in forensic interviews. They work together with the district attorney's office to follow through and make sure that these children are taken care of and the perpetrators are held accountable. But we need your help, and that's what we're here today, is make you aware that child abuse is still occurring, and please get involved and help us help these kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Sim. Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning. Child abuse is one of the most horrific crimes that can happen in our community. It hurts the most vulnerable and defenseless. That is why the Salt Lake City Police Department is committed to aggressively investigating crimes against children and teens. Those who hurt children inflict lifelong harm that can ripple throughout our community. In the most extreme cases, we have seen children and teens killed by the people expected to protect them. We owe it to the children who have been named harmed by abuse to do everything we can to prevent the next case. Survivors of child abuse are incredibly resilient. They are not defined by the visible or hidden scars of their abuse. At the Salt Lake City Police Department, our detectives work hard every day to ensure that justice when child abuse occurs. Our detectives are advocates for children and safe families. And more importantly, they give a voice to children and teen survivors. Our department has developed a response to child abuse that's holistic. I believe that the work of the Salt Lake City Police Department in this field is among the best in the country. Our officers, detectives, victim advocates work to prevent child abuse before it occurs. Our department provides trauma-informed care and offers help and support well after the abuse is stopped. Too often, police departments are viewed as reactive. I'm here today to tell Salt Lakers that is not the case with the Salt Lake City Police Department. As members of law enforcement, we provide a protective bubble to shield children from harm. We do this through our Promising Youth program. This program works very closely with the school district to provide prevention and intervention to youth who may face harm. Our social worker program, one of the earliest in the country, provides intervention to people who need extra help. And finally, our victim advocate program, our department provides wraparound services to survivors of abuse. Through these programs, the Salt Lake City Police Department commits itself to providing direct services and information about preventing child abuse and being responsive before it occurs. Every single day, dispatchers, patrol officers, crime lab technicians, paramedics, nurses, doctors, prosecutors, and many, many more work to help children become safe from harm. I am proud of the work that we are all doing here. Child abuse has no place in our community. It will not be tolerated nor accepted because our community is a place where children can do well, engage in fun, positive activities, and where adults can create safe, stable, and nurturing environments for children. Thank you.
It's National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and locally in Utah, it's Utah Family Strengthening Month, and both things work together to protect our children. I'm Laurie Ann Thorpe, and I'm the Director of Prevent Child Abuse Utah. And what you see with the cases here, what you don't see with the cases listed here are those that we don't know about, that don't come to our attention. That's part of the work that we do at Prevent Child Abuse Utah. We want to intervene before harm happens, and we want kids to understand that it is okay to talk and tell, and to understand what child abuse is and know how to seek help. So one of the things that we talk with families, we go into schools, we talk to kids, we help them understand what abuse is. Kids don't talk about this for several reasons. One is they feel responsible. They feel ashamed. They think it's their fault when something like this happens to them. It is unequivocally an adult's responsibility to protect a child. It's not a child's responsibility to protect themselves. We help kids to understand that when or if something ever happens to them, it is not their fault. And their whole responsibility is to talk, to tell. We talk to them about the difference between secrets to keep and secrets to tell. A secret to keep is your best friend's crush, who they like. That's a secret that it's okay to keep. A secret to tell is when you have an accident on the playground and you've wet your pants. You need help in order to get what you need, your needs taken care of in those situations. We try to give examples that help kids, that parallel the idea of child abuse so that they know when to talk to a trusted adult. And we always tell them, if you aren't sure, tell. If you talk to someone that you trust, and we help them understand they need a deep bench of people that they can go to and trust after mom and dad, who's next, who's next, who's next. Let's make sure we have at least 5 people that we can tell so that when something happens, there's someone who's going to stick up for us. And then we also talk about, don't wait until after something happens to tell. Anytime that you feel uncomfortable for any reason at all, talk to a trusted adult, and then it's on that trusted adult to make sure they intervene, to make sure that they protect in those circumstances. On average, a child will disclose child abuse 3 times before they get help. That's why it's so important for them to have at least 5 people that they can easily identify that they can talk to. We say tell and keep telling until you get help. Now, I know I've just told you a lot about how kids should talk and tell. We need them to do that. But an adult's responsibility is to say in those circumstances when they do hear of something or when a child says, I'm uncomfortable, they need to know what to do. It's an adult's responsibility to protect a child. In those circumstances, if something has happened, it's critical that we call the Child Abuse and Prevention, or the Child Abuse Hotline, that we get in contact with law enforcement, because there are steps that need to happen. Accountability has to take place in order for children to be protected. The best thing to say in those situations is, thank you for telling me, I know exactly what to do. That's what a child needs to hear. Oh, and don't forget, it's not your fault. You did exactly what you should have done. We work directly with families to help them understand and be strong and encircle their children in a protective way. And we work with students and educators to help them understand how to talk about child abuse, how to help kids understand what's happening, that it isn't their fault, and how to tell. We're so grateful to be part of a partnership that is thinking about intervening before harm happens. We do have power in that space. That is the hopeful message, that we can intervene before something happens to a child. It is our absolute privilege and responsibility. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ella Stott, and I'm very excited to be here today. When I was 15, I was sexually abused by someone I knew. I was terrified to talk to anyone about it because I felt guilt. Why did I feel guilt when I had done nothing wrong? Because some parts of society push this idea that victims of abuse aren't telling the truth. I don't know why anyone would think that I would lie about something that had caused me so much pain, but I did know that some people would think that. I started feeling so guilty about this situation because I was taking what they were saying and internalizing it. Even though I knew I wasn't lying, I couldn't help but wonder if I was to blame. I won't ever forget the day I told my parents. I was shaking, I was crying, I was so scared. Not because I thought they wouldn't believe me, but because I knew there was going to be a process once I talked about it. They were amazing though, and I'm so grateful for them because they took me to the Children's Justice Center, who helped me as we worked through my case. Everyone there was so wonderful and treated me with so much kindness and respect. I remember being terrified about going to the CJC because I was worried they wouldn't believe me. I was worried I'd have to talk to countless people about it, even though I'd barely mustered up the strength to tell my parents. Right when I got there, though, I quickly realized that I had no reason to be worried. They greeted me with a lovely tour of the building, with some coloring pages while I waited, with some snacks, and left me with hot chocolate and a blanket. During the interview, they asked everything with the utmost sensitivity and never once doubted what I said. Because of the CJC and the District Attorney's Office, I was able to receive justice without having to do interview after interview and with the most comfort possible. When you're in a situation like that, every bit of comfort and kindness, which they have in plenty, is appreciated. With them and my parents, the most important thing was that they believed me, and nothing was going to change that. Talking about things like this is scary, and it's scary for every survivor. But because of all the believers who helped me, I'm doing much better. Sometimes I still go back to a dark place and feel that fear and guilt again. What I felt before I told people might never be gone, but it's getting so much better. Now I don't have to suffer alone, and that support and company is one of the most valuable things out there. I'm a firm believer that society is moving in the right direction, but it's not there yet. It took so much courage for me to talk about this because I felt pressure, guilt, shame, and like it was my fault. It's not my fault. It's never the victim's fault, and we need people to believe that. We need people to believe them. We need people to believe us. I'm very excited to work as a counselor at Camp Hope this summer to help children who have had to go through abusive situations, and it means a lot to me that I could have that opportunity. These programs and these people who believe victims give me hope. If you're struggling, there are so many people out there who would love to help. If you are a person who wants to help survivors of abuse and neglect, there are things you can do, and we thank you. Listen to those around you, be sensitive to what they have to say, and be a believer, because it's one of the most important things to be. Thank you.
Ella, thank you so much for sharing your story. Every time I hear you tell, I just am amazed at your courage and your resiliency. So thank you so much. As we mentioned, this is a month where we talk about these issues because we want to raise awareness. And we want the community to be fully engaged and involved. And as I said, it takes all of us and the part that we all have to play in this. We have institutions that respond. We have nonprofits that are there to help. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately to all of us as individuals in our individual capacities. When somebody says that, we want to encourage them to have a safe space, and we want to have the ability to listen to them. So events like this is to raise that awareness, and hopefully that all of us can do our respective part. Thank you for coming here. We'll make ourselves available should you want to do one-on-ones. Thank you for helping us elevate this issue to our community. Have a great day.